New York on October nights always wears a deceptive beauty. From the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan's lights sparkled like a giant string of diamonds, promising dreams of life-changing fortune. But for Jack Miller, 32, standing before the mirror in a cramped rental apartment heavy with the smell of mold, Manhattan tonight felt like a fortress he was about to besiege single-handedly. Jack was struggling with a navy blue tie, a relic from his high school prom 14 years ago. His hands, broad and calloused with cracks permanently blackened by years of grease, were incredibly skillful when holding a wrench or a spanner, but they were pathetically clumsy with this delicate strip of silk. "Damn it," Jack muttered, undoing the third failed knot. He looked in the mirror. The suit he was wearing was bought from a Goodwill thrift store. It was tight around the shoulders due to the muscles of a manual laborer, but fortunately it was clean. He had sprayed on too much Old Spice to mask the perpetual scent of gasoline clinging to his skin, leaving the room reeking of artificial ocean breeze. "Daddy, you look like a penguin," a high-pitched voice rang out from behind him. Leo, Jack's 5-year-old son, was sitting on the floor, clutching a Captain America figure with peeling paint. The boy was wearing a kid's suit bought at Target, his red bow tie completely crooked and his blonde hair as messy as a bird's nest. Jack turned around, a gentle smile wiping the tension from his face. He knelt down and fixed his son's bow tie. "Not a penguin, kiddo. James Bond, or at least the Brooklyn version of James Bond." Leo giggled, revealing a missing tooth. Ideally, the boy should have been at Mrs. Higgins, the neighborhood babysitter, but at 5 p.m. sharp, Mrs. Higgins called to say her gout had flared up and she couldn't walk. Jack stood at a crossroads. Cancel his first date in the 3 years since he became a widower, or risk taking this little burden along. He chose option 2. The date was with Tiffany, a girl he had swiped right on Tinder. Her profile was dazzling with check-in photos at resorts in Miami, cocktail in hand, lips painted a luscious red. Jack had to drain his emergency fund, money he was saving for new tires for his pickup truck, to reserve a table at Le Bernardin. It was a 3-Michelin-star French restaurant in the heart of Manhattan, where an appetizer cost as much as a whole day of changing oil. "All right, Leo." Jack took a deep breath, ruffling his son's hair. "Listen to me. Tonight we are going to meet a very pretty lady. You just need to sit still, draw pictures, and eat bread. Don't talk about how Daddy snores, and absolutely do not mention wetting the bed last week. Clear?" "Clear, Captain," Leo saluted military style. Father and son walked out and climbed into a charcoal-gray 2005 Ford F-150. The truck was Jack's pride and joy as well as his livelihood, but it was as loud as a tractor. When Jack turned the key, the engine roared with a dry cough, shuddering violently before agreeing to start. "Come on, old girl," Jack patted the steering wheel. "Don't embarrass me tonight." The journey from Brooklyn to Manhattan was like traveling from Earth to Mars. When the battered pickup truck, with its bed full of repair tools, turned into Midtown, it looked pitifully out of place. In front of Le Bernardin, a long line of Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, and Ferraris were queuing up. When Jack pulled the mud-splattered Ford to the curb, the brakes screeched with an ear-piercing sound, causing several guests stepping out of their cars to jump and look back. The valet, a young man in a uniform crisper than Jack's suit, approached with a look on his face as if he had just smelled rotting fish. "Sir, are you making a delivery or—" Jack blushed, rolled down the window, and tried to speak over the engine noise. "I have a reservation. The name is Miller." The valet raised an eyebrow, took the keys from Jack using 2 fingers as if afraid of catching a disease, and handed him a ticket. Jack shoved a crumpled $5 bill into his hand, the most generous tip he could afford, but the guy only gave a slight, indifferent nod. Jack held Leo's hand tightly and walked through the gleaming, revolving glass doors. Inside Le Bernardin was another world. The gentle scent of fresh lilies, soft jazz music, and the elegant whispers of New York's elite washed over them. Everything exuded nobility, from the pristine white tablecloths to the warm golden light reflecting off crystal glasses. Tiffany was already sitting at a table near the window. She looked even more glamorous than in her photos. Perfect blonde curls, a tight red dress showing off every curve, and a Louis Vuitton bag placed neatly on the table like an exhibit. She was glued to her iPhone screen, fingers swiping furiously. Jack adjusted his tie for the 10th time and led Leo over. "Hi, Tiffany. Sorry I'm a little late. Traffic on the Brooklyn Bridge was terrible." Tiffany looked up. Her eyes scanned Jack from head to toe like a barcode scanner, assessing the cheap suit and the old leather shoes that had been polished thoroughly but still showed creases. Then her gaze stopped at Leo. Her eyes, lined with sharp eyeliner, widened to their limit. What is this?" Tiffany exclaimed, her voice not hiding her horror. Jack smiled awkwardly, pulling out a chair for Leo. "This is Leo, my son. The babysitter got sick suddenly, and I couldn't leave him home alone. You don't mind, do you? Leo is very well behaved." Tiffany let out a dramatic sigh. She looked around as if afraid someone might catch her sitting with a child. "Your Tinder profile said single dad, not full-time dad on the first date. My God, this is a 3-Michelin-star restaurant, not McDonald's." "I know, I'm sorry," Jack stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "He'll just sit and draw. Would you like to order?" Tiffany rolled her eyes and waved for a waiter with the attitude of a queen commanding a slave. "Bring me the wine list, immediately." When the waiter brought the menu, the real torture began. Tiffany didn't even look at Jack. She skimmed the wine list and pointed to a long French name. "I'll have the 2015 Chateau Margaux, and for appetizers, the Ossetre caviar, followed by the Maine lobster with butter sauce." Jack looked at his own menu and almost swallowed his tongue. There were no prices printed on it. Menus for guests often lack prices at ultra-luxury restaurants, but he knew that bottle of wine probably cost as much as his monthly rent. "And for you, sir?" the waiter asked, his eyes glancing over Jack's blackened hands. Just water for me. And could the boy have a portion of French fries, please?" Jack mumbled. "We have truffle mashed potatoes, sir. We do not serve French fries of the mass-market variety," the waiter replied coldly. "Yes, give him that then." The meal proceeded in a stifling silence, broken only by the sound of Tiffany chewing caviar and her interrogating Jack. "So you said you're a business owner?" Tiffany asked, swirling her expensive wine. "That's right. I have a small auto repair shop in Brooklyn. We specialize in Ford trucks. I love the feeling of bringing a dead engine back to life. It's like magic." Tiffany let out a scoff, a jarring sound. "Fixing cars? So a mechanic? God, I thought business owner meant you had a startup or something. So what do you drive? Don't tell me it's that loud truck parked outside." "That's a 2005 F-150, V8 engine, very durable."
"Stop it." Tiffany raised her hand to cut him off. "I don't care about engines. I care about whether you have a membership card to the golf club in the Hamptons. What's your credit score? Do you know I was on a yacht with a stockbroker last week?" Jack felt a bitter taste in his throat. He realized he had made a huge mistake. This woman wasn't looking for love. She was looking for a walking ATM. "Miss," Leo suddenly spoke up, his innocent voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. The boy held up a crudely drawn picture. "I drew you, but I accidentally colored your lips purple like the witch Ursula because I ran out of red crayon." Tiffany stared at the drawing. In the picture was a blonde woman with a gigantic mouth. She was so angry her face turned red. "You little brat! Didn't you teach him to respect adults?" Just then, Leo reached for the salt shaker, but his oversized suit sleeve caught on a silver spoon. Clang! The spoon fell onto the marble floor, the sound echoing through the quiet room. Every eye turned toward their table. "This is horrible," Tiffany hissed through her teeth. "I can't take this anymore. This is a humiliation." Tiffany, calm down. It's just a spoon. Jack tried to reassure her, bending down to pick it up. No, Tiffany shouted. Get the check. Immediately. I need to leave this circus. Jack waved for the waiter. When the bill was placed on the table in a leather folder, Jack peeked at the final number. $850. His heart seemed to stop beating. But for the sake of a man's honor, he pulled out his Visa debit card and placed it on the tray. 5 minutes passed like a century. The waiter returned, his expression a mix of pity and disdain. Sir, the card was declined. What? Jack stammered. That's impossible. I checked the balance. The bank reported the transaction was blocked due to suspected fraud or insufficient funds. Do you have another card? Jack patted his empty pockets. He didn't use credit cards. He only had this one debit card. Perhaps because he had never swiped such a large amount at such a luxurious place, the bank's security system had automatically locked the card, fearing it was stolen. Can I call the bank? It will just take 5 minutes. But Tiffany had run out of patience. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping backward with a loud noise. The entire restaurant was now silent, staring at them.
This is ridiculous, Tiffany shouted, no longer maintaining her image. You dragged me to this restaurant, make me listen to your cheap grease stories, make me endure this spoiled brat, and now you say you can't pay? Do you expect me, a photo model, to wash dishes to pay your debt? Tiffany, please, keep it down, Jack pleaded, his face burning with shame. He saw Leo shrinking back in his chair, eyes welling up with tears. Loser. Tiffany pointed straight at Jack's face, her long, sharp nails looking like they wanted to claw apart his self-esteem. Look at yourself. Nails black with dirt, a ragged car, dragging along a whiny kid and an empty card. Who do you think you are trying to date me? You're just a poor, lowly mechanic dreaming big. With that, Tiffany grabbed the pristine white linen napkin, crumpled it up, and threw it hard at Jack's chest. The napkin fell to the floor, lying forlornly next to his old shoes. She grabbed her Louis Vuitton bag and spun on her heel, the sound of her high heels hitting the floor sounding like nails being hammered into a coffin. The atmosphere froze. Whispers began to rise from the surrounding tables. How pitiful. Talk about punching above his weight. Why did security let that kind of person in here? Jack stood rooted to the spot, gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. He wasn't sad about being humiliated. He was used to society's disdain, but he was in pain because his son had to witness this. Leo tugged gently on Jack's sleeve, tears rolling down his cheeks, his voice trembling. Daddy, do we really have to wash dishes? I know how to wash dishes. Don't be sad, Daddy. I'll help you wash them. The child's innocent words were like a knife slicing into Jack's heart. He knelt down and hugged his son, trying to hold back the manly tears threatening to spill. No, Leo, you don't have to wash dishes. Daddy will take care of it. Just as Jack was about to take off his watch, the only valuable asset he owned, left to him by his father, to offer as collateral to the restaurant, a voice rang out from behind him, not loud, but powerful and sharp. The French fries here are terrible. They deserve to be on the floor, young man. Jack turned around. Sitting at the table right next to them, hidden behind a large potted plant, was a woman. She was about his age, wearing a finely tailored charcoal gray suit that hugged her slender but commanding figure. Her black hair was tied up in a neat bun, revealing a face that was elegant but cold as if carved from ice. In her hand was a half-empty martini. It was Elena Vance. All of America knew her. CEO of Vance Tech, the youngest self-made female billionaire of the decade, called the Iron Lady of Silicon Valley by Time magazine for her ruthless and effective leadership style. She had just flown to New York that afternoon to negotiate a merger, and she hated dining alone, until the drama at the next table caught her attention. Elena had watched everything. She saw how Jack fixed his son's tie. She saw his calloused but gentle hands, and she saw the cheap arrogance of the girl named Tiffany. Elena stood up, taking her glass, and walked over to Jack's table. Her perfume wasn't overpowering like Tiffany's. It was a subtle scent of sandalwood and jasmine, the smell of understated luxury. She looked down at Leo, who was staring wide-eyed at the diamond necklace sparkling on her neck. No one has to wash dishes. Elena said, her voice firm. She turned to the waiter standing there stunned and pulled a heavy pitch-black metal card from her purse, an American Express Centurion card, the power card that only the ultra-rich were invited to own. "Jean-Luc," she called the waiter by name, it seemed she was a regular, "put this table's entire bill on my account and add a 20% service charge." Jack jumped up, confused, waving his hands. "Oh no, miss, I can't." Elena held up a finger, silencing him, a natural gesture of someone used to giving orders. "Quiet, Mr. Mechanic. I'm not doing charity. I'm paying for entertainment. That performance by your ex-girlfriend was more dramatic than a Netflix movie." She turned to Leo, the icy smile on her lips suddenly melting a little, becoming strangely warm. "And Jean-Luc, pack the restaurant's most special cheesecake for this young man to take home, the kind with gold leaf on top." The waiter bowed low. "Yes, Mrs. Vance, immediately." Jack looked at the woman before him, his wounded pride fighting fiercely with gratitude. He looked into her eyes, sharp amber eyes that held no cheap pity, but curiosity and respect. "Why?" Jack asked, his voice hoarse. "You don't know us." Elena took a sip of her martini, smirking. "Because I hate people who think a thick wallet can buy character. And because," she glanced at the Ford F-150 through the restaurant window, "my car has been making a clunking noise for days, and I have a feeling you're the only person in this fake city who knows how to fix it without ripping me off." She pulled out the chair Tiffany had just sat in and sat down casually opposite Jack. "Sit down, Jack. Don't let this wine go to waste. She ordered Chateau Margaux. It's excellent." Jack hesitated for a second, then looked at Leo, who was watching him expectantly. He let out a breath and pulled out his chair. In that moment, amidst the splendid golden lights of Le Bernardin, the gap between the poorest man and the richest woman in the room seemed to be erased by a black card and a golden heart. It was the beginning of a strange connection, but Jack knew the storm was only just beginning, because the male version of Cinderella and the prince or queen never get a happy ending right in the first chapter. 3 days after the incident at Le Bernardin, Jack Miller still thought it was all a wild dream, a dream where he was humiliated, then saved by a goddess who stepped out of the cover of Fortune magazine. He returned to reality, the sound of wrenches hitting metal, the pungent smell of grease, and utility bills waiting to be paid. But Elena Vance was not someone who disappeared easily. On Wednesday afternoon, while Jack was lying under a 2010 Chevy Silverado to check the drive shaft, the phone in his pocket vibrated violently. A text from a strange number, short and commanding. 7 p.m. tonight. I want to have dinner where you usually eat. Don't wear a suit. E.V. Jack wiped his hands on a black rag, looked at the phone screen, and laughed. Where I usually eat? She would definitely regret this. Joe's Diner in Queens had no Michelin stars. It only had dust stars and the smell of bacon clinging to every cracked tile. Jack sat at a corner table wearing a simple white t-shirt and faded Levi's jeans. He tapped his fingers nervously on the sticky plastic table. At 7 sharp, an Uber Black pulled up out front. Elena walked in. This time she wasn't wearing a business suit, but her cream-colored Chanel silk dress and the Hermes Birkin bag on her arm still screamed wealth amidst this space reeking of French fries. The truck drivers and construction workers in the diner stopped chewing, staring at her as if seeing an alien. Elena ignored them all, walked straight to Jack, and smiled naturally. "This place is lively," Elena commented as she sat on the red vinyl chair that was torn in one corner, exposing the foam. "You still have a chance to go back to Manhattan," Jack joked, sliding the grease-stained menu toward her. "There's no foie gras here, only burgers the size of a human head and milkshakes sweet enough to give you diabetes." "I'll have the biggest cheeseburger here," Elena told the waitress, who stood gaping at the handbag worth her annual salary. The meal began with endearing awkwardness. Elena, a woman used to silver forks and silk napkins, was now struggling to hold a giant burger dripping with sauce.
As she took a bite, a little ketchup smudged onto the corner of her mouth. Reflexively, Jack took a rough paper napkin and gently wiped it for her. The moment his calloused fingers touched Elena's smooth skin, they both froze. "Why are you a single dad?" Elena asked suddenly, her voice softening, shedding her business armor entirely. "Where is Leo's mom?" Jack put the burger down, his eyes heavy as he looked at his fizzing Coke. This was a forbidden zone he rarely shared. "Sarah passed away 3 years ago," Jack said, his voice hoarse. "Ovarian cancer. By the time it was detected, it was already terminal." Elena was silent, listening. "Damn healthcare system," Jack smiled bitterly. "Our insurance didn't cover the latest therapies. I sold everything. The small house we had just bought on mortgage, the new pickup truck, everything in exchange for 6 months of chemotherapy for her. But in the end, the money ran out, and she left too." Jack looked at his cracked hands. "That's why I don't use credit cards, and that's why my debit card got locked the other day. I'm obsessed with not having emergency funds for Leo. I'm afraid that one day he'll get sick and I'll be helpless again, like when I watched Sarah go." Elena looked at the man before her, not with pity, but with a deep resonance. In her world, men spoke of loss in terms of stock market numbers. Jack spoke of loss with his very life. "You're a good father, Jack," Elena whispered, placing her soft hand over his rough one. "Sarah would be very proud." That evening ended in laughter as Elena tried to finish a giant milkshake and got brain freeze. They seemed to have found a common rhythm, despite the gap in their backgrounds. But the cruel reality of America didn't let them go that easily. 2 weeks later, Elena called Jack, her voice excited. "Jack, next week is the Met Gala, the Costume Institute benefit. I'm a diamond sponsor this year. I want you to go with me." The Met Gala, the most lavish event in New York, where tickets cost $30,000 and the guest list is vetted more strictly than FBI files. "Elena, Don't worry," Elena cut in. "I've arranged everything. 10 a.m. tomorrow, be at the garage. There will be a surprise." The next morning, when Jack was crawling out from under a Ford Raptor covered in grease, he saw a small, well-groomed man holding a tape measure and a tool case standing in the middle of the messy workshop. "Buongiorno," the man spoke with a thick Italian accent. "I am Giuseppe. Ms. Vance sent me. We need to turn you into a work of art." For the next 2 hours, Jack had to stand still while Giuseppe measured every centimeter of his body. Chest, waist, leg length. Jack felt like a racehorse being inspected before hitting the track. "This tuxedo uses imported vicuña wool," Giuseppe chattered while measuring. "Buttons made of black mother of pearl. Its value is about $5,000, but for Miss Vance, money is no object." $5,000. Jack swallowed hard. That amount was enough for him to buy a brand new Snap-on tool set or pay for a year of private kindergarten for Leo. "Do I look like a Ken doll?" Jack asked, looking at himself in the mirror after trying on the sample suit. "No, sir. You look like a very well-kept gentleman," Giuseppe joked, but the remark felt like a slap in Jack's face. The gala night took place at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Flashes from hundreds of reporters went off continuously like lightning. Jack stepped out of the limousine, hand in hand with Elena. She was magnificent in a gold haute couture gown, like a true queen. Jack, in his $5,000 tuxedo, felt like he was wearing the costume of an imposter. On the red carpet, reporters screamed Elena's name. "Elena! Elena, look over here! Who is the man with you?" Jack was pushed aside, becoming a faint shadow serving as the background for Elena's brilliance. Upon entering the banquet hall, the feeling of isolation became suffocating. Surrounded him were billionaires, movie stars, and politicians. They spoke a language Jack didn't understand: mergers, hedge funds, yachts in Monaco, and contemporary art. "Oh, Elena!" A balding man with a pot-belly in a velvet suit approached, holding a glass of champagne. It was Richard, the chairman of a major bank. "Long time no see. Heard the merger with TechCorp is going well." "Very well, Richard," Elena smiled politely. "Let me introduce you. This is Jack Miller."
Richard turned to Jack, his gaze condescending. "Hello, Mr. Miller. What line of work are you in? Venture capital?" I'm a mechanic," Jack replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I fix pickup trucks." The smile on Richard's lips froze for a tenth of a second before he laughed loudly as if Jack had just told a joke. "A mechanic? Oh, that's funny. You mean you own a franchise of garages? Elena, your taste lately is interesting." Richard patted Jack on the shoulder and turned sharply back to Elena to continue discussing real estate, completely treating Jack like air. Jack stood there, gripping his wine glass until his knuckles turned white. He felt like a decorative accessory, an exotic animal Elena had brought to entertain the upper class. Feeling suffocated, Jack excused himself to the restroom. In the marble-tiled men's room, Jack was splashing cold water on his face to calm down when two young men in Tom Ford suits walked in. They didn't notice Jack standing in the hidden corner, wiping his face. "Hey, did you see Elena Vance's new toy?" One guy laughed while fixing his hair. "The big guy with her?" the other replied. "Rumor has it he's a mechanic or something. His skills in bed must be masterful for the Iron Lady to spend money dressing him up in that getup." "For sure, that guy really hit the jackpot, a genuine gold digger. It's truly a cheap male Cinderella story. But you know Elena, she gets bored easily. Sooner or later she'll get tired of that grease smell and kick him back to whatever corner of Queens he came from." The two men laughed boisterously and walked out. Jack stood frozen. Those words weren't just insults. They were acid thrown straight at the self-esteem of a man who'd sold his entire fortune to save his wife, a father who always taught his son to live with his head held high. "Gold digger," Jack repeated the word, looking at himself in the mirror. The $5,000 tuxedo now looked ridiculous. It didn't make him more elegant. It turned him into a clown. Jack walked out of the restroom, went straight past the crowd raising toasts, and found Elena standing making polite conversation near the balcony. He took her hand, pulling her out onto the windy balcony overlooking Central Park. "Jack, what's wrong? I was talking to the senator." Elena was surprised. "I don't belong here, Elena," Jack said, his voice cold but trembling from suppressed anger.
"What are you saying? Everyone likes you," Elena tried to reassure him, reaching out to fix his bow tie. Jack stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Like me? They're laughing in my face, and laughing at you, too. They call me a new toy, a gold digger hanging on your coattails." "Jack, don't care about what they say. They're just jealous. I love you. Isn't that enough?" Elena raised her voice, the night wind blowing her carefully styled hair. "No, Elena, it's not enough," Jack snapped, his eyes red. "You might not care, but I care. I am a man, a father. I need Leo to look at me as a provider, a hero protecting the family, not a gigolo kept by a female billionaire." He pointed at the tuxedo on his body. "Look at this. You sent a tailor. You paid for everything. You're trying to turn me into an acceptable version to take to parties. But underneath this expensive suit, I'm still Jack the mechanic, and I don't want to be a charity project or a piece of jewelry for you to show off your generosity." "I just wanted you to be more confident. I wanted to share my world with you," Elena shouted, tears beginning to well up. She had never seen Jack this angry. "Your world," Jack smiled sadly, looking at the glittering lights inside the banquet hall. "Your world is too expensive for my self-respect. We are too different, Elena. Your checks, they aren't building bridges, they're building a wall between us." Jack undid the expensive bow tie and stuffed it into his jacket pocket. "I'm sorry. I have to go back to Leo. He needs his dad, a real dad, not this doll in a suit." Jack turned and walked away, his back lonely and resolute. He walked straight to the exit, leaving Elena standing alone on the windy balcony. Under the cold moonlight of New York, for the first time after years of conquering the business world, Iron Lady Elena Vance felt truly impoverished. She had billions of dollars, but she had just lost the only man who saw her true self. Jack took the subway back to Brooklyn. The image of a man wearing a $5,000 tuxedo, sitting with his head down amidst old subway cars covered in graffiti, became a tragic portrait of the class divide in America that night. 3 weeks, 21 days, 504 hours. That was the time since Jack Miller left Iron Lady Elena Vance on the windy balcony of the Met Museum. Returning to the garage in Brooklyn, Jack's life seemed to have returned to its old orbit. The clashing sound of metal, the pungent smell of grease, and stains hard to wash from under fingernails. But one thing had changed: the silence. Before, the silence in the garage was a sign of concentration. Now it was emptiness. Jack worked like a machine. He changed oil, rotated tires, fixed brake systems with absolute precision, but his eyes were soulless. The staff in the shop whispered to each other, not daring to turn on the loud rock music like usual for fear of angering the boss. "Daddy?" Jack was under the chassis of a 1996 Ford Bronco when he heard Leo call. He slid out on the creeper. Leo was sitting on a stool, holding a Lego set, but looking distantly out the window, where the New York sky was turning gray, signaling a storm. "What's wrong, son?" Jack asked, wiping a grease streak from his forehead. "Where is the sparkly princess, Daddy?" Leo asked, his voice sad. "I finished a new drawing for her. This time I colored her lips red, not witch purple anymore. She won't be mad, right, Daddy?" His son's question was like a wrench tightening around Jack's heart. He sat up, sighing heavily. "She's not mad at you, Leo. She's just busy in her world, a world very far from here." "But you miss her," Leo said, the innocence of children always seeing through what adults try to hide. "You keep looking at the phone, even though it doesn't make any noise." Jack didn't know how to answer. He did miss Elena. He missed how she laughed when she got ketchup on her lip, missed how she argued with him about V8 engines, even though she knew nothing about cars. But his self-respect, the only asset of a poor man, would not allow him to return. He was afraid he would be the toy again, the lucky mechanic granted a favor by the Queen. On the other side of the Brooklyn Bridge, in a skyscraper of glass and steel in Manhattan, Elena Vance was also going through her own hell. She sat in her 200-square-meter office, looking down on the tiny city below. On her desk was a freshly signed merger contract worth billions of dollars. She should have been celebrating with expensive champagne, but she only felt lonely. Jack's words that night still echoed in her head. "Your checks, they aren't building bridges, they're building a wall between us." Elena looked at the closet in her office, where designer dresses worth tens of thousands of dollars hung. She realized she was wrong. She had tried to pull Jack into her frivolous world, forcing him to wear a tuxedo that didn't belong to him, forcing him to endure the scrutiny of Wall Street vultures. She had used money to upgrade him, while his simplicity and sincerity were what upgraded her barren soul. She didn't need a man to be an ornament for her at parties. She needed the man who wiped her mouth with a cheap napkin at Joe's Diner. It began to rain, a torrential summer downpour typical of New York. Elena stood up, looking down at the VIP parking lot. She made the craziest decision of her career. In Brooklyn, the rain turned the potholed roads in front of Jack's garage into muddy puddles. Jack was about to close early due to his terrible mood when a strange sound rang out. Not the crisp roar of pickup trucks or the revving of motorcycles. It was a smooth but powerful engine sound being ruined by the hiss of escaping steam. A shiny black Rolls-Royce Phantom, the symbol of ultimate luxury, sluggishly entered the small alley, waded through a mud puddle, and parked right in front of Jack's dilapidated garage. The sight was so bizarre, Jack thought he was hallucinating from inhaling too many exhaust fumes. A $500,000 car sitting lost amidst piles of old tires and scrap metal, white smoke billowing from under the hood. The car door opened. There was no uniformed driver holding an umbrella. The person stepping out was Elena, but not the Elena of the Met Gala. She wore simple blue Levi's jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and Converse shoes. Her hair wasn't in a haughty bun, but tied in a messy ponytail. In her hand was not an Hermes bag, but a large pepperoni pizza box from Grimaldi's and a huge Star Wars Lego box. She had no umbrella. The torrential rain immediately soaked the most powerful woman on Wall Street, making the t-shirt cling to her body, rainwater streaming down her beautiful face. "Elena!" Elena called, her voice drowned out by the rain. Jack threw the rag on the ground, rushing out into the rain like an arrow. He couldn't believe his eyes. "Elena? What the hell are you doing here? You're soaked!" Elena stood there, shivering from the cold, but her eyes burning with fire. She pointed at the smoking supercar behind her. "My car broke down, Jack. The engine died right in the middle of the bridge." Jack looked at the Rolls-Royce, then at Elena. With 15 years of experience as a mechanic, he only needed a glance to know the problem. "Elena," Jack squinted, rain running down the bridge of his nose. "A Rolls-Royce Phantom never just dies because of rain, unless—" He walked over and popped the hood. Hot steam blew into his face. Jack looked at the perfect V12 engine compartment, then laughed out loud. Unless someone deliberately loosened the coolant hose. He turned back to look at Elena. She was biting her lip, her face flushed red, unclear if from cold or embarrassment. Elena stammered, "I didn't know how to see you without you chasing me away. I thought if the car broke down, you wouldn't have the heart to refuse a customer." "You ruined a $500,000 car just to see me?" Jack asked, his voice softening, the anger of the past 3 weeks vanishing with the rain. "Not just the car." Elena stepped closer to him, the pizza box in her hand starting to get soggy. "My heart is having engine failure too, Jack, and you are the only mechanic in New York who has the spare parts for it." She looked straight into his eyes, her amber eyes welling with water. "I'm sorry about the tuxedo. I'm sorry about the party. I don't need a man for display. I need a man who knows how to change a tire in the rain, knows how to value the money he earns, and loves his son more than life itself. I'm sorry for trying to change you. I realized I loved the smell of that oil. It's more real than any perfume I've ever smelled." Jack stood stunned. This woman who could buy this entire Brooklyn neighborhood with a single card swipe was standing in the rain, soaked like a drowned rat, holding a cold pizza just to apologize to him. Jack didn't say anything. He stepped forward. "Jack, your clothes are dirty. I'm wearing white." Elena didn't finish her sentence. Jack pulled her into his arms, hugging her tightly. The black grease stains on his work clothes pressed onto Elena's pristine white t-shirt, creating patchy streaks. But Elena didn't care. She dropped the pizza box onto the car hood, wrapped her arms around his neck, and buried her face in the crook of his sturdy shoulder, smelling of gasoline and rain. "You can't fix a Rolls-Royce radiator with bare hands, but I think I can fix your heart." "Daddy, the princess!" The office door burst open. Leo rushed out into the rain, not caring about getting wet. The boy ran to hug both their legs. "You came back! You really came back!" Elena let go of Jack, kneeling on the wet concrete to hug Leo. "I came back, little guy, and I brought Lego, but the pizza is a little wet."
"That's okay," Leo cheered. "Wet pizza tastes good too." The three of them stood there, under the pouring rain of Brooklyn, next to a smoking Rolls-Royce and a smashed box of pizza. It wasn't a Hollywood-style romantic scene with candles and flowers, but for Jack, it was the most perfect moment. 1 year later. If you opened the Sunday edition of the New York Times, you would see an article in the Life section with a shocking headline, "Wall Street's Strangest Wedding When Italian Suits Meet Mechanic Tattoos." No Plaza Hotel, no wedding party on the shores of the Hamptons. Elena Vance and Jack Miller's wedding was held right in the backyard of their new home in the New York suburbs, a spacious house with a huge garage for Jack to freely customize cars. The air was thick with the smell of American-style barbecue ribs. Charcoal smoke wafted, mingling with lively country rock music. The guests were a crazy mix that sociologists would take years to analyze. In the left corner, Richard, the bald banking tycoon who once despised Jack, had his shirt sleeves rolled up, sweating profusely trying to learn how to play horseshoes from Big Mike, a heavily tattooed mechanic weighing 120 kg, Jack's best friend. "No, old pal," Big Mike slapped Richard on the shoulder, nearly knocking the banking tycoon over. "You throw like that and you'll break the horseshoe. Use your wrist, the wrist, like when you sign checks." In the right corner, a group of powerful businesswomen sat on plastic chairs, drinking Budweiser chilled in an ice chest, laughing hysterically at Giuseppe, the Italian tailor, recounted the time Jack almost hit him over the tape measure. Tiffany, the gold digger from years ago, happened to pass a newsstand at the airport while preparing to fly economy class for a vacation. She saw the wedding photo on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. In the photo, Jack wore a tuxedo, but he wore no bow tie and left his collar open comfortably. Elena wore a simple but exquisite white wedding dress, beaming, holding a beer in one hand and gnawing on a rib covered in sauce with the other. The caption read, "The Queen of Wall Street and the Mechanic, the decade's most successful merger. Merged asset? Unconditional love." Tiffany angrily crumpled the newspaper, muttering, "The world has truly gone mad," then dragged her suitcase away, her heart full of jealousy. Back at the wedding, Jack was standing by the grill, flipping the last ribs. Elena walked over, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "You know," Jack whispered, pointing toward the Rolls-Royce Phantom, now fully repaired, parked at the entrance, decorated with beer cans and the words "Just Married." Fixing that car's radiator was really expensive. Genuine parts cost an arm and a leg. Elena giggled, tightening her embrace. "Don't worry, hubby. I have the owner's lifetime discount card. Besides," she kissed him lightly on the cheek, "that was the cheapest price I ever paid to buy back the happiness of my life." Jack turned around, looking into his wife's eyes. No more distance, no more awkwardness. Only pure love remained between two people who dared to overcome prejudice to find each other. "Ready for the first dance, Mrs. Miller?" Jack asked. "Always ready, as long as you don't step on my feet with those work boots," Elena joked. They stepped onto the dance floor, under the warm glow of filament bulbs strung across the old oak trees. The song "Stand By Me" began to play. Around them, the world of billionaires and the world of mechanics merged into one, proving that happiness doesn't lie in the numbers in a bank account, but in finding someone who dares to stand with you in the rain and dares to eat barbecue ribs with their hands alongside you on the biggest day of your life.